In a quiet little town named Maple Ridge, the sun spilled golden rays upon the streets, illuminating the lives of the townsfolk going about their daily routines. The town had an air of normalcy, broken only by the routine patrolling of its police force. This particular morning should have been just another day for Officer Ryan and Officer Blake, two local police officers who had clocked in, ready to play their version of neighborhood watchdogs. Armed with arrogance and prejudice, these officers roamed the streets, a mindset that blurred the lines of law enforcement and personal bias. While the streets were mostly empty, they soon spotted a man walking down the sidewalk, an unassuming figure they had no reason to suspect, save for the color of his skin. "What's he doing around here?" Officer Ryan muttered, already brimming with suspicion. "Probably up to no good," replied Officer Blake, nodding in agreement, as if they held the universal key to discern a criminal's intent simply by observing his appearance. That moment marked the beginning of a shocking chain of events. They pulled over their squad car, stepping out with aggression that dripped from their unyielding postures. They approached the man, calm and unbothered, who merely paused to face them. "Is there a problem, officers?" he inquired, his voice steady but polite. Ryan scoffed dismissively. "Yeah, you're acting suspicious. What are you doing in this neighborhood?" "I live here," the man replied simply, his tone forthright. Ryan and Blake, frustrated at the man's composure, a rare trait that contradicted their expectations of submission, sought justification for their blind aggression. "Turn around and put your hands behind your back," Blake ordered with an air of authority. "For what?" the man asked again, still calm, a faint smile gracing his lips. "Don't play games with us," Ryan snapped, ignoring protests as they cuffed him, relishing in what they assumed was their display of unfiltered power. Bystanders began to murmur quietly, aware that something felt amiss, but their voices were drowned in the officer's arrogance. As they dragged the man to their squad car, they made scornful remarks and continued their relentless mocking. "Bet you thought you were too good for this." Blake sneered, but the man remained silent, as if knowing that they had picked the wrong fight. What the officers didn't realize was that this was no ordinary man. He wasn't a criminal or a loiterer. He was Chief Michael Davis, the head of the local police department. The man they had just brutalized with their arrogance was about to show them the potent force of karma. The courtroom was packed with spectators the following week, filled with locals interested to witness what was initially expected to be a cliché event, a simple case of bad cops asserting their authority. The trial began, with officers Ryan and Blake seated confidently at the prosecution table, smug expressions plastered on their faces, believing they had trapped innocent prey in their web of accusations. Not far away, doors swung open, and strutted Chief Davis, clad in a sharp, tailored suit that spoke volumes of his authority. The air in the courtroom grew thick with anticipation. Whispers buzzed among the crowd, rippling through like electricity, sensing that this wasn't going to be a regular case. The judge raised an eyebrow at the unusual presence and called for introductions. Ryan and Blake stood, brimming with false confidence, ready to recount how they had upheld the law. "Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to introduce myself," Chief Davis insisted, his voice resonating through the room with commanding authority. The crowd fell silent, captivated by the gravitas of his presence. "My name is Michael Davis. I am the chief of police for this district." Panic surged through Ryan and Blake at the realization of their monumental misjudgment. Their expressions morphed from smugness to wide-eyed shock, the weight of their mistake cascading down upon them like ice-cold water. Gasps echoed from the gallery as the implications of their actions hit them. Davis continued, his voice steady and articulate. "These officers arrested me without cause, subjected me to shame, and mocked me merely based on the color of my skin. Today, I am here to not only defend myself, but to also hold them accountable for their actions." With each word, the tension in the room thickened. Chief Davis laid out the events of that day, painting a vivid picture of how prejudice dictated the actions of the officers. Their arrogance had neglected any semblance of due process. He recounted their derisive comments, their unprovoked insults, and their failure to recognize him as a colleague or a fellow citizen deserving of respect. But the testimony didn't stop there. Davis called witnesses to the stand. Bystanders who had seen the arrest took their places, recounting what they had observed. One witness, identified as Mary, a local resident, approached the stand, her expression ranging from fury to resolve. "I was walking my dog that morning when I saw the officers approach the man," she began, her voice unwavering. "He wasn't doing anything wrong, just walking down the street. But they treated him like he was a criminal from the start, shouting at him and insulting him. And when he didn't immediately act like they expected, they cuffed him." "What kind of insults?" the prosecutor pressed, keen to paint the officers as entirely devoid of human decency. "They called him a boy and said things like, 'Let's see how tough you are now.' It was disgusting," Mary replied, her voice cracking slightly as she recalled the moment. Ryan and Blake stared intently at the table, avoiding any eye contact, the weight of shame already suffocating them. The courtroom murmured, disbelief settling like a shroud around the air. Another witness, a man named Carl who had been sitting in his car nearby, corroborated Mary's account. "They didn't even try to speak to him like a normal person," he observed incredulously. "It was clear they already decided he was guilty of something before they even spoke to him." The officer's initial bravado dwindled as every testimony surfaced, painting the same offensive picture. The cruel reality of two officers abusing their authority, allowing their biases to dictate their actions. Then, as if sensing the tide turning further against them, Chief Davis requested to address the court directly. The judge granted him permission, and he stood tall before the gathering, his presence commanding the attention of every soul present. "Your Honor," he began, his voice resonating as he asserted his authority. "I have served as an officer for over 20 years, dedicating my life to protecting and serving this community. I've witnessed both the best and worst of humanity, and yet I find myself a victim of the very system I devoted my career to." Pausing to let the gravity of his words sink in, he continued, "What happened to me that day is not an isolated incident. It's a symptom of a larger problem, a culture that allows bias and prejudice to thrive unchecked. These officers didn't see me as a person or a fellow officer. They saw a stereotype. That assumption led them to humiliate, insult, and arrest me without cause." Turning to face Ryan and Blake directly, his tone shifted but remained steady. "You didn't just disrespect me. You disrespected the badge, the oath we all take to serve our community. Your actions didn't just harm me. They undermined the trust that people place in us as law enforcement officers." The courtroom fell silent, the tension almost palpable as the officers shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet his piercing gaze. The judge intervened, adjusting his glasses thoughtfully. "Officers Ryan and Blake, I am struggling to understand your justification for your actions. You claimed this man was acting suspiciously. On what grounds?" Ryan cleared his throat, his voice shaky as he responded, "Your Honor, we believe, based on our experience, he matched the description of someone reported in the area." Chief Davis raised an eyebrow, his demeanor unyielding. The judge pressed further, "And this description, did it include anything beyond his race?" "Well, it just looked like he didn't belong in that neighborhood," Ryan stammered, fortifying the firestorm of condemnation around him. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder, some people audibly gasping. Blake tried to interject defensively, but the judge raised a hand to silence him. "Officers, do you mean to tell me your entire basis for arresting this man was because he looked like he didn't belong?" The embarrassed officers exchanged frantic glances. It was apparent they had nothing substantial to offer. The next witness took the stand, an elderly man who had witnessed the events unfold with a sense of outrage too great to contain. He articulated the raw injustice he had observed, the shocking reality that the officers had already deemed a man guilty long before listening to his side of the story. As the courtroom filled with further evidence detailing the inadequacies of the officers' claims, it became increasingly clear that this was not a case they would win. And then came the pivotal moment, the turning point for everyone present. With resolve, Chief Davis stood once more to address the court. "Your Honor, I am not here to seek personal revenge. I am here to ensure that justice is served. Not just for me, but for everyone who has ever been treated unfairly. This is a chance to show that no one, no matter their position, is above accountability. The audience erupted into applause, a rare show of spontaneous support for a reformative cause. Chief Davis's words resonated deeply, striking chords of familiarity in every heart present. The judge's demeanor softened, and even he appeared moved by the authenticity of the chief's plea. As the prosecutor made closing remarks, emphasizing the necessity of upholding justice and enforcing accountability within law enforcement, the defense's weak arguments fell flat. The judge's stern gaze surveyed the room, anticipating the gravity of his closing decision. Officers Ryan and Blake, your actions on that day were not just unprofessional. They were a disgrace to the badge you wear. I am ordering an internal investigation into your conduct. Until its conclusion, you are both suspended without pay. Ryan and Blake slumped in their seats, defeated, emotionally naked, stripped of their arrogance. The courtroom buzzed with energy, and yet the air remained tense with the chilling realization of the officer's fate. Outside the courtroom, Chief Davis emerged, greeted by a swarm of reporters flanking him on all sides, eager to grasp the details of the groundbreaking revelation that had just transpired. He smiled but allowed the weight of the moment to echo through his words. Let this be a lesson. Justice and accountability must apply to everyone. The story made headlines across the nation, sparking fervent debates about the systemic bias that often permeated law enforcement and the dire need for reform. Chief Davis didn't merely triumph in a personal battle. He ignited a broader conversation about race, dignity, and the responsibility of those who wear the badge. In the end, justice wasn't only served. It became a wake-up call for everyone in that courtroom and beyond. Chief Davis's unwavering dignity, tempered by resilience, proved that even in the face of monumental adversity, integrity could carve a path toward change. The two officers, blinded by their prejudices, learned a grave lesson. Their actions carried consequences, especially when their victim was a leader of respect and honor in the community. This wasn't just about one man's story, but an audacious stand against a broken system, a clarion call demanding accountability and respect for all individuals, regardless of the color of their skin. Chief Davis embodied this message, with his calm yet firm response resonating throughout the court and leaving a profound impact on all those who bore witness. As the debate continued in town halls and living rooms, the names Ryan and Blake faded into infamy, synonymous with the reckless abuse of power. Meanwhile, Chief Michael Davis emerged as a beacon of hope, reminding society that anybody could ignite change when face-to-face with injustice. But it required integrity, courage, and a steadfast refusal to accept the status quo. Never miss stories like this. Hit subscribe and let's delve into more riveting tales that challenge the way we perceive our world, the depths of our humanity, and the power of standing against injustice. #, #, #the end.